Well, hi, this is a ham radio upgrade class, and my name is Gary, your instructor, ham radio call sign Whiskey 4 Echo Echo Yankee. We were just talking before we got started in the class tonight that you can be a newcomer or you can be a new ham for a long period of time. So no matter how long you've been in ham radio, there's always something new. And so that's the purpose of tonight's class. They feel that if you're going to upgrade to the extra class, there are certain things that the people who put the test together, want you to know. So tonight, for the first half of the class, we're going to talk about operating practices, which is Chapter 2. Chapter 2 in this book. It's the American Radio Relay League License Manual for the extra class, the 13th edition. And this is the book that we use for the class. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you just dropped in, if you've got your general class license and want to upgrade, here's a free class to help you to do that. The book is about $30 on Amazon, and that's the only expense. Although we do recommend a calculator, you'll hear more about that. But let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about some operating practices, some things that you maybe need to know about as you move on to getting the upgrade. And you upgrade to an extra class license by taking a multiple choice test, either locally or online. It's 50 questions. No Morse code involved anymore, so yay. All right. Bruce, if you would go to the laptop, please. Just want to mention something that in both Dave and my presentations, we generally, blue text means something. If you see blue text, it relates specifically to a test question. I think we've got them all, but I might have missed something in my presentations. So, but generally, if you see blue text, that's something that you want to know about. We're going to be referring throughout the class to this. It's on page 2-2 in your book, but it's not very readable. But it's the frequency allocations table that tells you with your class of license what frequencies you can operate on. And the American Radio Relay League, Bruce, if you'd come back to me just for a sec. They publish this nice. It's not laminated, but it is glossy. I would like to send you one of these if you don't have one already. On the back, it's got the zones in the United States, so the number, and when you get a call sign, this is the 4 land over here and 8 land up there, et cetera, et cetera. So if you'd like a color chart, please just send me an email, back to the laptop please, w4eey@arrl.net, and say, Gary, I'd like to get a color chart, and we'll mail it out to you. But have you looked at mail rates lately? A first class forever stamp is now 78 cents. Oh, I've been around too long. I remember really cheap postage. If you could,
it will pay for it.
Well, so here, yeah, thank you. That was my cue. If you'd like to donate to help defray costs, there's different ways you could do it. If you go to my website, w4eey.com, there's a donate button there that uses PayPal. Just send a couple bucks, that'd be great. Or here, if you're watching on YouTube, there's Super Thanks. You can just click on that. It's the dollar sign with the heart, and you just send a buck or two. If you don't have the cash, or if it's not convenient, don't worry about it. Still send the email to w4eey@arrl.net, and I'll be happy to send a color chart out to you. But it would help us to defray the costs. All right, let's get started with section 2.1, general operating. And so, quick show of hands, and then Dave will spotlight me, but how many are operating on the high frequency bands already? Just raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, okay. So some of you already are, that's great. All right, Dave, you can go ahead and spotlight me if you would. So what do you like to do? There's different things you can do. Casual conversation, long distance contacts, now digital modes, FT8, there's nets, there's all sorts of different activities on the air, on the high frequencies that you can participate in. But all of them generally involve the prime directive, or the prime objective, which is to communicate, to make contacts. And making contacts we also call operating. So operating practice is about making contacts and communicating. Rag chewing, if you've heard that term, it's just, casual talking about lots of different topics. You will hear on the HF bands sometimes some things, naughty words and things like that. Ham radio, it's a broad spectrum of people. You can avoid those folks. Just go on and talk about hobbies or other things. You could be goal-oriented, trying to work all states or work as many countries as you possibly can. Contesting is another thing we're going to talk about as well. So those are just various things that you can do that might impact or affect your operating style. Now, DXing, this is what intrigued me back in the day when I was doing medium wave radio, shortwave listening and listening for distant stations, a long ways away. Hearing distant stations and now making contact with distant stations. Come back to me just for a second, Bruce. Okay, I'm going to tell an embarrassing story here. I'm old. I graduated from high school in 1972, and us old guys sometimes get up in the middle of the night to go use the bathroom. Yeah, well, I've started doing something that I hadn't been doing for a while. I'm leaving my radio on. And so when I get up, do my thing, I'll go in the radio and check and see if there's anything new. Maybe try to work something on 160 meters. Well, 2 nights ago, I was doing that very thing, and I sat down in my chair, and all of a sudden, a station from Uganda was spotted on the spotting networks. We're going to talk about spotting here in just a little bit. On 20 meters, single sideband. I thought, wow, I don't have that. That's an all-time new one. That would be a new country for me. So I, clicked the clicks and spun the dials and got to the frequency and pointed the antenna in his direction, and there he was. Not real strong, but readable. And he was working stations in Europe primarily because this was in the middle of the night. And so when he broke, I just threw my call sign out, Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Took me twice. I didn't get him the first time. And he came back to me, and so I added that as an all-time new contact. DXing, looking for DX contacts is really one of the funnest things. It establishes a goal for your efforts. You can keep count of how many countries you've worked. It motivates you to improve yourself and your station. If you go to conventions like Hamvention in Dayton or Hamcation down in Orlando, you'll find there's DXers groups and dinners and stuff, and you'll find that DXers are the most interesting people. So you get a chance to meet some fascinating folks. And you get a real sense of satisfaction when you make a difficult contact. Like that, I was up at 2 in the morning making a contact to Africa. Wow, okay, cool. And there isn't a formal program for measuring your performance as how many countries you've worked. The DX Century Club, which is administered by the American Radio Relay League, century in this case means 100 countries. So when you've worked and confirmed that you've made contact with 100 countries, you can submit this information to the ARRL, and they'll check it and certify you, and then you get your certificate back, and you're a member of the DX Century Club, and then you can add endorsements to 150, 200, 300, etc. So there's about 340 different entities out there right now that are possible to work. I'm at about 220 right now, so I've still got some ways to go. And it's always fun when you're chasing new ones. Well, how are you going to find the DX? Well, by tuning, just tuning the band and listening and identifying every signal. That's the old-fashioned way, but it still works. It especially works if you're the first one to hear them starting to call CQ, calling for anybody to call them back. You can talk to other people, research. When is the station on? Okay, so I know I need to be up at 2 o'clock in the morning to work the station. So your local group can help you. If you've got a group of DXers in your area, if somebody works a rare one, After they work them, then they'll let you know. They'll never let you know until they've worked them first, but okay. And then DX clusters. There's a classic book from Bob Locker, W9KNI, which you'll find at Hamfest. It's still out there, The Complete DXer. It's a little outdated now, but it's fascinating to see the links that DXers will go to find out about new contacts. This is pre-internet, so they'd use local repeaters. They'd have a pattern where they would call somebody up and let the phone ring once, and that would tell them that something hot is on the air. They'd follow up with each other with high frequency sheets that would tell them where the stations were. DX tout sheets were also what they were known as. Nowadays, we have something called the DX cluster. And what it is, most hams are using computerized logging software. And so in this software, it's very easy for that software to, after you make a contact, if you set it up that way, to send that contact information out to the internet, out to a server for the spotting networks. And it's propagated around the world to various DX clusters. And the DX clusters can be accessed via a web page. This is DXheat.com. Or it could be actually in your logging software. You also may have a client built in that reads spots coming in. That's what happened with me at 2 in the morning with Uganda. And it's an interesting history. Bruce, we're going to have some audio from the laptop here, if you would. Let me play you a video. I have this video from Dan, N9LVS. He gave me permission to use it in our classes. And so the history of the DX cluster.
In this video, we're going to take a quick look at the history of the DX cluster. Most people know the DX cluster by websites that look like this. But where did it start? Cars were a little different back then, and packet radio was first introduced into amateur radio in 1978 through research done by the Montreal Amateur Radio Club. This was followed by the creation of the first TNC, or Terminal Node Controller, designed by Doug Lockhart, VE7 APU, of the Vancouver Amateur Digital Communications Group. This was followed very quickly by Tapper, the Tucson Amateur Packet Radio, with creation of the TNC-1 in 1982, and then the TNC-2 in 1984 and 85. Packet radio revolution ignited, sold over 1,000 TNC-2 kits. The TNC-2 was what was needed to make this mode good for the masses and not just the experimenters. From there it went very quickly from 2 or 3 operators in any given city to thousands of radio operators, and manufacturers selling TNCs of all shapes and sizes. Turned to the late 80s, and more software for the TNCs became available. Emergency communications networks were set up, chat bridges, bulletin board services, as well as the DX cluster. Dick Newell, AK1A, during the late 1980s developed software called Packet Cluster, which became very popular in an exciting way for ham radio operators interested in DXing to exchange DX-related information. Many cities now have DX spotting nodes and networks. HF operators connected to their local DX cluster in order to receive reports on the latest DX. These type of packets came about from those interested in chasing DX. Many amateurs like to frequent the HF bands, looking for that rare international operator to contact. A DX cluster allows many HF operators to be connected over the packet radio at the same time, by still operating on the HF band and hunting for that elusive DX. When someone finds a station, they send a packet message on the DX cluster, which then sends the information to all the packet operators using the DX cluster. In this way, you have several stations monitoring the band looking for that DX. Often an amateur will spot a DX station and then distribute the DX report almost instantly. The DX cluster allows everyone to operate many more hard-to-find DX stations in one evening than was possible with just oneself. Some amateurs have been known to attain enough contacts to qualify for DXCC in a matter of weeks. There is also a good chance of a pileup on a particular DX contact due to all the people that are on the DX cluster. That was yesterday. And yesterday, we had to connect to a TNC or the DX cluster, or the other option we had was a BBS service or a Telnet service, both of which required a phone line and a modem. Today we have the internet, which has quite a few websites dedicated to DX spotting, including DX Watch, as well as DX Summit, unless we not forget DX Fun, and even eHam has a spotter page. DX apps for your phone are also all the rage. For Android phones, NKC Cluster and Ham Radio DX Cluster, as well as DX Fun Cluster. And for Apple, there is DX Spot and DX Macrolis and DX Cluster for the iPhone. We can also find DX spotting in logging software like Ham Radio Deluxe and DX Stream. So has the DX cluster changed things in the last 35 years? Absolutely. That elusive contact isn't as elusive as you thought. Get on HF, connect with the DX cluster, and have some fun. 7 threes and good DX from N9 LVS.
Yes, indeed. So that's the world we're in right now. We have the ability to have almost information at our fingertips in a real-time basis based on these networks. And it is, in fact, possible to get DXCC in a weekend. If there's a contest weekend and there's a lot of international stations on the air, you can do it. But making a DX contact is an art. And we say that we are here, one of the things the service is supposed to be doing is advancing the radio art. You need to know the bands, you need to know the target, know your station, what your station is capable of and not, know your radio and know yourself, and to have confidence in yourself to get things done. And one of the techniques that folks can sometimes have a problem with is, well, doing the splits. No, not this splits, this splits. Doing split operation. What it amounts to is that you will be listening to the DX station on one frequency, and that DX station will tell you, I'm listening on a different frequency. He may tell you the frequency he's listening on, or he may say, I'm listening up, or he may say, I'm listening 5 to 10 kilohertz up. So generally in the same band, and it's controlled by the DX station. They're the ones that set up split operations. So when you are tuning the bands and you hear a DX station, I always say the first thing you do is listen, listen, listen. And one of the clues to listen for is he operating or she operating split? And if they're operating split, now here's where you got to know your radio and how to set it up in that way. Now we say split operation, but if you hear somebody interfering with the DX by transmitting on their frequency, you'll hear the Italians go split, split, split. You'll hear it. So when the DX station says they're listening on another frequency, what you do is radios nowadays, transceivers, typically come with 2 variable frequency oscillators, VFO-A and VFO-B. And you will set up your choice, A on the DX frequency, B on your transmit frequency, and your radio will have a capability of being able to listen on your transmit frequency. So you can actually listen to stations that might be calling them. The whole point of it is to try not to transmit on the DX frequency, because you make yourself look silly and you're transmitting your call sign. So listeners will know who was doing the trouble. Now, it will happen to you. Has it happened to me? Oh yeah, many times. When you make a mistake, you forget to put the transmit on the right setting, whatever. Let me just show you, it can happen also in Morse code, although we don't do a lot of Morse code teaching here in the class, but you can have the DX on one frequency, as you see there, 14.025, and the pileup is only 3 kilohertz above, and that's where folks are transmitting Morse code back to them. In this case, you could do it with a radio with 2 VFOs, with a VFO-A on the DX frequency and VFO-B on the transmit frequency. Okay, that's great. Or you could do it even with 1 VFO and receiver incremental tuning is another way to do it. You don't have to remember all of this. Notice there's no blue text here. But why? Why would we want to do split? Well, it's because the DX station may be transmitting on a frequency that's prohibited to some stations. There is a difference between ITU zone 1 and ITU zone 2, so sometimes this comes into place. It also separates the calling stations from the DX station. It helps him to control what's going on, and it improves operating efficiency by reducing overall interference. So back about a year ago, there was a DXpedition to American Samoa, K8ER, no, K8R, no E, K8R, American Samoa, and they were on the air, and, well, I tried to work them. Let's see how that went. More audio from the laptop here, Bruce. All right, we have Kilo 8 radio on 20-meter single sideband. We have the radio set up for split operation. So what you're looking at here is the front panel of my Maestro controller. And if you look up above here, get the right hand, this is my receive slice. This is the A slice. And it corresponds to this frequency here, 14285. So K8R is transmitting on 285. And over here is my transmit slice, which corresponds to 14290, or 5 kilohertz above the receive frequency. Notice the transmit light is illuminated over here on the B slice, not on the A slice. So this means I'm going to be transmitting over here and listening over here. I'm going to go 5 up.
Hotel 8, Oscar Hotel 8, Sierra Radio 59.
Tried him earlier and was unable to get through.
Roger, Major, hey, thanks.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
Kilo 8 Radio, listening up.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. 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 I assume he's tuning around. He was saying 5 to 15 earlier. Now he's gone. 5 to 15 kilohertz above or up. Here's another view of my station. This is what I'm seeing when I'm in the shack. And of course, here's the Maestro screen that we were seeing before, UTC time. Up above is my logging software, the N3FJP amateur contact log. Note this section down here is a DX spots retriever, so it's actually receiving spots. And you'll actually hear the logging software announce a spot a little later on. Over in this direction, where am I going? This is software from Karl Mareski, Pegasus Plus. It interfaces with my radio as well, kind of provides a more conventional front panel display that's virtual on the screen. Note the VFO-A right here on the bottom, and VFO-B is up on the top, and you'll see the B go red when we transmit. Above that is the control panel, the front panel of my RF Kit S legal limit amplifier. And then finally over here we have a PST rotator, which is controlling the rotation of my hex beam. Let's carry on. Let's see if we can work him. Saturday the 27th of July. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
Kilo 8 Radio, listening up.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
Spot, American Samoa, 20, SSB.
That's my logging software that announced another spot coming in.
Japan Alpha Polo, Japan Bravo Tango 58.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. I don't know if you noticed he said arigato, so it seems he's working Japan.
Japan Alpha 2, Delta Alpha Hotel, Roger.
Japan Alpha 2, so another Japanese station. So at this point I was concerned his antennas were pointed away from me.
Japan Alpha 2, Alpha Delta Hotel, you'll find out. I need to clear it up.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
Needed spot. American Samoa. 20. SSB.
You follow that? Thank you, we'll be listening up.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
AC4G, you'll find that.
So AC4G, so he was working a U.S. station.
Listening up.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee.
Radio something for Mike, okay? Radio Whiskey 4 Mike, for that. Thank you, Roger.
Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. So you can see here on the spectrum display, here's some energy from another station that was trying to work him. I wasn't transmitting at that point. And up above here, a little higher in frequency, is another station that is also likely calling him. But I did not have receive turned on here, so we couldn't hear what the call sign of this station was. But you could. It's another way to monitor the situation. Whiskey 4, Echo, Echo, Yankee. All right. Nope. So in the end, I didn't work him. But here is an example of split operation on single sideband. Well, thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. And on flex radios, they call VFO-A and VFO-B, they call them slices. It has to do with the graphical way that they relate to the frequency bands. So rather than call them a VFO, it's a slice, but it means the same thing. So knowing how to operate split is important on your radio. That's where you get the manual out, and there's a whole section. You'll find it there on operating split. But again, before you call somebody, listen, listen, listen. Figure out what is going on. Is the DX station coming back to the loudest station? Are they coming back to the last station? So sometimes timing is everything. Sometimes don't throw your call sign out right away. Sometimes wait, 1, 2, now, and you'll get through. Don't rely on spotting networks 100%, especially in contests, because they'll type in the call sign wrong. And you think you're going to be talking to somebody in Uganda, and that's really someplace completely different. So, and then when you're calling, as you saw me there over and over and over again, just call by sending your call sign once, Or if you hear other people calling and call twice, then okay, that's acceptable. Then you can do it if you know the DX is responding. But you really only need to send your call sign once, or maybe twice to get through successfully. We'll talk about, Sandra had a comment in the chat about confirmation of contacts. We'll talk about that here and coming up. You need to know propagation shifts, and Dave Ivey is going to have a great presentation for you all later on propagation. Generally, though, higher frequency bands like 15 and 10 meters during the day, lower frequency bands like 80 meters and 40 meters at night. And again, it goes back to that color chart that we're going to be sending you out. Oh, if you can't wait, you can always go to this URL from the American Radio Relay League, and they have PDF files of the color chart. So you could download it and print it out, or do it right now. But if you'd like one of the printed ones, again, here's the email, w4eey@arrl.net. All right, Sandra, this is for you. Making the contact is only half the battle. Getting the confirmation is the other. And so there are different ways that you can confirm a contact. I exclusively use the American Radio Relay League Logbook of the World. I don't even have paper QSL cards anymore. And Logbook of the World, you can sign up for it. You don't have to be an ARRL member. There is a process and a procedure. So if you've not signed up for Logbook of the World, go find somebody in your local ham club who's done it, and they can walk you through the steps. It can be a little daunting the first time. But what it is it's an online computerized system that you're keeping your log in a computer. You can just upload it to Logbook of the World on a periodic basis. The DX stations also upload their logs, and they cross-check. And click, you've got confirmation. It's as easy as that. Now, if you want to, and that's fine. If you want to use it for DXCC credit, ARRL will charge you a small fee for the processing. But it's a lot cheaper than any other alternative. Used to be back in the day, paper QSL cards were sent. They're postcard-sized photographs or just contact information. You would include self-addressed envelopes, and sometimes the DX station would ask for green stamps. Anybody old enough to remember S&H green stamps? No, not that. Was dollar bills. Yes. Dollar bills are green stamps. So if a DX station is asking for 5 green stamps on their QRZ page, what they're saying is, if you want a QSL card back, send me 5 American dollars, please. Now, the best thing is if you can find a DX station that has a stateside QSL manager. QSL manager is someone who handles QSL cards for a DX station. In that case, generally all you need to do is send your QSL card to the QSL manager. He'll look it up in the log and then fill out the DX QSL card and send it back to you in your self-addressed stamped envelope. So that's pretty good. And then the American Radio Relay League has a QSL bureau where they send QSL cards to and from entities in bulk. So a QSL manager that we mentioned there handles QSL cards for a DX station. They confirm contacts for a DX station. So if you look on QRZ.com for at the DX call sign there, and his information says I have a US QSL manager, follow the procedures and you can get a card back that way. Now, if you want to send cards out using the bureaus, they exist in most countries. They have incoming and outgoing, as I mentioned. It's the least expensive way to exchange cards, but it's also the slowest way to receive cards, upwards of 2 years sometimes. More information on the ARRL's incoming QSL service can be found here, and then more information on the outgoing service is at this URL. And remember, tomorrow morning I'll be sending you an email to the Dropbox link, and this presentation will be there as a PDF, so you can find these URLs, and they're clickable in the PDF. All right, switching topics. Contesting, one of my favorite things to do. A contest is something where you're operating for a limited period of time and generally trying to work as many stations as you possibly can within the parameters of that contest. And they have contests for Morse code, they have contests for single sideband, they have contests for FT8, for radio teletype. But the whole thing about contesting is to make sure that you have some fun, always improve, and learn something new. Contesting can stress you and stress your equipment, and you'll learn about how important a comfortable chair is, for example, so you can stay in the chair for longer. If you'd like to find out more about contests that are going on, there are various contesting calendars online that you can go check out. And contesting is also a very good chance for a new DX contact. So if you're looking for that rare Moroccan station, for example, they're likely going to be on the air during a contest. And you do not have to submit a log to operate in a contest. If you're going to formally operate in the contest, most contests ask you to submit a log. But if you're just doing it to make the contact and to get the confirmation on Logbook of the World or something like that, that's perfectly valid. That's fine. You don't have to do that. Besides the modes, there are various high power, low power categories, single operator, multi-operator. Are you going to use the internet? Are you not going to use the internet? Classic overlays, rookie overlays. If you're going to be contesting, you're going to be logging using computers. It's the only way to go anymore. I used to log by hand with dupe sheets, which were a thing of the past, and you don't want to do that anymore. So there's contest logging software. Probably the most powerful and most ubiquitous is N1MM Plus. And it's free. You can just Google it. It's very powerful. It's got a learning curve, but it's got lots and lots and lots and lots of features. So it'll interface directly with your radio. It'll control your radio. It can control your antennas. All sorts of interfaces. So if you like to geek out and have things talk to each other, it'll do that. If you'd like to start out a little more sedately, there's a software suite from N3FJP. His amateur contact log is a general operating log, and that's what I use. That's what you saw there. And then he has contest logs specific to various contests. And you can download a suite of his logs. I think it's up to about $60-something. I don't remember the exact price anymore, but the URL is there, n3fjp.com, and it's easier to use, more logical to understand than N1MM. So to get started, and as a general logging software, it's great. It interfaces with Logbook of the World and all of the other stuff. It's really powerful. So if you're going to operate in a contest and you want to formally be in the contest, then the contest organizers will ask you to submit a copy of your log in a specified format. And that specified format is called a Cabrillo file. A Cabrillo file is a standard that was generated by the Worldwide Radio Foundation. I forgot what the acronym is, but it's a text file, and it just has all of the information necessary for the contest organizers to work with your log. So that's one way of exporting your log contents, is via a Cabrillo file, and that's what contest organizers want. But let's say you've run a contest and you want to bring all that contest data from your contest software into your general log, because you are operating using your call sign, so it should be part of your general log as well. When you do that, you want to export it as something called an ADIF file, Amateur Data Interchange Format. ADIF has more information than is contained in the Cabrillo file, and so if you're doing N3FJP contest log and you get all done, you want to export all of that into his normal general purpose log, the ADIF file. So Cabrillo and ADIF are the two export formats that we use. So those spots, that said, I'm here, I'm on this frequency, should you spot yourself? No, fact, many contests that's prohibited. It's prohibited practice. So you can't, put your own call sign up and say, here I am, I'm on this frequency, because it might be prohibited by the contest rules, and it's generally considered poor form. Come back to me just for a second, Bruce, if you would. So you'll sometimes hear hams, especially the old curmudgeonly ones, oh, it's another contest weekend. Those contesters are going to be on the band. They're going to take over all the frequencies and I'll never be able to make a contact. Let me introduce you to something called the WARC bands. WARC stands for the World Administrative Radio Conference. And back in the 70s, 1979, the World Administrative Radio Conference came up with some new amateur radio bands. The 30-meter band, the 17-meter band, and the 12-meter band, for example. And most modern radios today will have these bands available for your use. They're on the color chart. You can see what you can do. Some bands are data only. Some bands you can do all different modes. Contests are never run on the WARC bands. So if you're one of those curmudgeonly guys, go to the WARC bands and you'll make all the contacts you want. But use the ARRL color chart, the thing that I showed you earlier, and the ARRL band plans. Band plans are different than the color chart. Band plans are more specific. They'll tell where weak signal activity is supposed to be, or where on VHF Earth, Moon, Earth activity is supposed to be. And you can find band plans for all of the bands at the ARRL website. And so, for example, here for VHF, UHF contests, the highest level of activity is generally in something they call the weak signal segment. And so, let me turn my laser pointer on here. There we go. That's weak signals. So that's general Morse code and weak signals. Here's general single sideband operations. So CW contests are probably going to be in these frequencies. Single sideband contests on these frequencies. Use the band plans. They're available for, this is for 2 meters and it's an abbreviated version of it. But you can find them for all of the bands. And so knowing what is expected, what the standard is, can help you find the signals that you're looking for. What is really popular now are data modes, especially FT8. And FT8 uses software that is free to download from the internet called WSJTX. It is used in contesting to make contacts. It sends signal strength in dBm. You can see how strong you are and how strong the target station is. It's great, except when there's an FT8 contest. When you put the software in the contesting mode, and I'll show you here in a second how that is, then they change that signal strength and they don't send that anymore. They instead send the grid square, the Maidenhead locator where you are. Well, this causes contacts not to complete if FT8 WSJTX, if both stations are not in contest mode. So here's more information about the WSJTX, and here's the URL where you can download it. Developed by a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, and if you go into the software under the Advanced tab, this is where you set the radio, the WSJTX, to be in the contest mode, just something to know about, because notice blue text, grid square replaces signal strength in the contest mode for FT8 using WSJTX. All right, switching operations. Remote operation, that's linking to your station over the internet. The control point for the station is where you are controlling the station. No special call sign ID is required. You don't have to say Whiskey 4 Echo Echo Yankee stroke remote. No, you don't. And in fact, when I've operated remote, and I've done years of remote operation, nobody can tell the difference. The first week I was doing it, I'd always tell people, hey, I'm operating remotely. And I always got back, I couldn't tell. So I stopped doing that. But the radio that I bought initially to do this was this, the Flex 6600. which is marketed as a radio server. It doesn't have a front panel. There's no knobs on it whatsoever. You control it either via computer software or by the Maestro panel that you saw earlier. So the 6600 now lives in my workshop downstairs, and the Flex 6600 is connected to an RF amplifier and then goes out to antennas. Now, from the microphone through the Maestro into the Flex, these are digital circuits doing their digital thing, and there's latency or a time delay. It's small, but it's added, especially if you have a lot of filtering going on. So there's something called transmit latency, where when you talk, the actual RF that is emitted to the antenna comes out maybe milliseconds later than you actually talked. Whereas with analog circuits, it's pretty much in real time. The same is true on receive. The signals coming in from the antennas are received and are sent back to the Maestro and out to a speaker, and the signals that you hear may be slightly delayed from real time. Keep that in mind. And then if you're connecting via the internet, via the World Wide Web, via a router, via a long distance path, additional latency is likely going to be the result. So just know that a latency can happen. But I've been operating remotely for 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. This was one of my pride and joys. I had a Windows 8 tablet, and I was able to get all of the software for the Flex running, and also for my amplifier, and use this little Windows 8 tablet to operate my station from Hamcation down in Florida. So that was a lot of fun. All right. You made it through the first section. A little long-winded, sorry about that. But now we're going to talk about some test questions. These are the actual test questions and the actual answers that you would see on your test. It's just that the answers are going to be in a different order. So don't memorize A, B, C, or D. That won't do you any good. But what we'd like you to do is to, we're going to show you the question, and then we'd like you to wait 3 seconds. It's our 3-second rule. And then if you you can unmute in the Zoom classroom and tell me what you think the right answer is, all right? These are the actual questions, actual answers. We should have covered them. Let's see how we did. So what indicator is required to be used by U.S. licensed operators when operating a station via remote control?
D delta.
D delta is correct, but wait that 3 seconds, please. Let people read it, and they're not reading as fast as you are. All right, next one. Yep, no additional indicator is required. So which of the following file formats is used for exchanging amateur radio log data?
Charlie.
See Charlie.
Yep, Charlie, the ADIF. That's one of the 2 file formats, yep. And from which of the following bands is amateur radio contesting generally excluded?
Alpha.
It's a work band. The only work band there is 30 meters. Very good. So what is the function of a DXL QSL manager?
Bravo.
Yep, handle the receiving and sending of confirmations to a DX station, getting that confirmation. And during a VHF-UHF contest, in which band segment would you expect to find the highest level of single sideband or CW activity?
See Charlie.
Charlie.
Yeah, in the weak signal segment of the band associated with that mode, yes. And what is the Cabrillo format?
Alpha.
Yes, it's a standard for submission of electronic contest logs. When we first started teaching this class, I called it the Cabrillo format. And Spanish speakers wrote me, it's Cabrillo, Gary. So, okay, that's it. Which of the following contacts may be confirmed through the logbook of the world? Read carefully.
D Delta.
Delta.
Yeah, that's the clue if you've been in the general class. And when I say read carefully, it's likely going to be all of them. Yeah. Special event contacts. Yep. Contacts between a U.S. station and non-U.S. station. Yep. Contact for works all states. Yeah, all of those are correct. And why do DX stations often transmit and receive on different frequencies?
Charlie. Delta.
Charlie is correct. Bravo is correct. Alpha is correct. So yeah, it's another one of those. I didn't want to give it to you, so Delta. All of those choices. So how should you generally identify your station when attempting to contact a DX station during a contest or a pileup?
Alpha.
Yeah, send your full call sign once, maybe twice. And what indicates the delay between a control operator action and the corresponding change in the transmitted signal? What do we call that?
Charlie.
Yeah, software-defined radios are known for latency. It's not major, but it's something to be aware of. So what information replaces signal-to-noise ratio when using the FT8 or FT4 modes in a VHF contest?
Delta.
Yeah, the grid square is put in place. And if both are not operating in the contest mode, the software doesn't know how to handle it yet. They're going to fix it one of these days. All right. Section 2.2, amateur satellites. This is a shorter section, so we're going to get going here. Operating amateur satellites can be as simple as this, a handheld antenna pointed at a position in the sky where you believe a satellite to be, a handheld radio that'll transmit and receive. I've actually down at Orlando, Hamcation, there are people walking around making satellite contacts looking just like this. If you're interested in operating on amateur satellites, you need to know about AMSAT. It's the Amateur Satellite Organization. They've got software and resources available to you, and if you get serious about it, you probably want to become a member of AMSAT. So back in the day, we always used to say, and we're not talking about the Zodiac here, that all amateur satellites are LEOs, low Earth orbiting satellite. We used to say that, except that a few years back, in 2018, the Qataris, they were putting up a commercial satellite, and they put a portion of that satellite over to amateur radio use. So the satellite is known as the QO100 satellite. It's over the equator, over Africa, and so it has a footprint that extends up into Europe and down into Africa, and there's a URL here for a software-defined radio where you and I can go to listen and see what activity is going on that satellite, and you'll hear all sorts of different modes: radio teletype, sideband, everything is up there. If you'd like to know more about this satellite, TX Factor is a great ham radio program from England, and so this is it's on YouTube, and you can find it here at this URL below, and they talk all about that satellite. Well, the problem is the footprint of that satellite doesn't extend into North America, so we can't directly access that. So for us, all amateur satellites still are LEOs, and it's compared to geostationary satellites. And so a LEO travels, and you have to track them in azimuth and elevation. And a LEO traveling from the south to the north is called an ascending pass. A LEO traveling from the north to the south is called a descending pass. Node is when the node point is when the satellite crosses the equator, and orbital period, that's the time for one orbit. So here's a comparison. Here's a geostationary satellite. It's way out there, 22,000 kilometers, I believe it is. So it appears to be stationary with the Earth. It matches the Earth's rotation. LEOs, on the other hand, are rotating around the Earth. All of the Starlink satellites for internet, those are low Earth orbit satellites. And so this is what it looks like. So here's our satellite. North Pole is at the top. So is this an ascending or a descending pass?
Descending.
From our point of view, it's a descending pass, yes indeed. And one interesting thing about satellites is, well, if you compare them to radio repeaters will receive on one frequency and retransmit out on another frequency. Or we could say that they're receiving on one channel and they're transmitting out on another channel. Satellites use something called transponders. And they actually retransmit an entire band of frequencies. So you have a band of frequencies that can go up to the satellite and a complete band of frequencies that come down. For amateur satellites, we use UHF and VHF for satellite communications. And so mode UV, you uplink to the satellite on UHF and downlink to the satellite on VHF, and it can be many, many signals going on that satellite at the same time. And you monitor the downlink frequencies and see where there might be an opening, and you calculate and transmit accordingly so that you get into an empty spot there. So mode UV is UHF up, and down is VHF. The first letter is always the uplink. So mode UV is uplink on UHF. Mode VU is the opposite. You uplink to the satellite on VHF and it comes back down on UHF. Generally the 2-meter band and the 70 centimeter band. Say uplink is always the first letter. And the transponders, we call them linear transponders. They retransmit a band of frequencies, and any modulation mode can be passed. Although continuous carrier modes such as FM and radio teletype are generally avoided because they use more power. So Morse code, single sideband, that's just fine. Want you to scratch your head a little bit and remember back to the technician and general class and about mixers. With a mixer, you have a signal coming in, you have a local oscillator, and you have the sum of those two frequencies coming out, and you have the difference of those two frequencies coming out. So an inverting linear transponder is one which uses the mixer's difference products instead of the sum. So they're using these. Why is that important? Well, think of a mirror image. What's right becomes left, what's left becomes right. On a normal transponder, this will probably make it clearer, so we have signal A at a lower frequency and signal B much higher up at a higher frequency. Well, on a linear transponder that is non-inverting, the frequency relationship remains the same. But on an inverting transponder, it uses the difference, so the uplink on A is below B, but on the downlink, B is below A. So you just got to keep in mind, what satellite are we using? Is it an inverting or a non-inverting transponder? We said the signal position of the band is reversed. Upper sideband becomes lower sideband. And Doppler shift, or the change in frequency due to the motion of the satellite, is reduced because the uplink and downlink frequencies go in opposite directions. Okay, Gary, I probably won't get on satellites, but if I wanted to, what's an important hint? Well, amateur satellites need you to set your transmit power to match others that are going up to the satellite. And it always used to be back in the day that you had to have expensive spectrum analyzers to monitor the transponder's downlink frequencies, find all of the signals there, note their level, and then if you were going to transmit up to the satellite, you would see where your signal was, and you'd only increase power gradually until it started to match everybody else's, and then you knew you were set. I used to do that for Voice of America at the transmitting station in Munich, Germany. That was one of my things. We set up a satellite uplink facility. Well, spectrum analyzers are pretty expensive and pretty complex, but we don't have to worry about that. Software-defined radios, which are much more affordable. The SDR Play is a good one. They will look at downlink frequencies coming from an amateur satellite, and you can use it in a spectral display to see levels. Why am I so concerned about levels? Why are all commercial satellites concerned about levels? Well, remember, it's up in space. There's no extension cord up there. They're using solar panels and batteries. They have a limited power budget. And the stronger a signal is that goes up to the satellite, it's got to transmit down stronger. And if you send up a really horrendously high-powered signal to the satellite, all of the power is sucked away from other users and given to you because you're the power hog up there. So don't be a power hog if you're going to transmit to a satellite. The other thing is you're sending your call sign generally somehow, and others will note who you are and they will find you out. So just keep that in mind. A lot of amateur satellites still have packet radio aboard. You saw a little bit about packet radio and its history there when we were looking at the spotting networks. Well, an amateur satellite carrying packet radio is called a PACSat. And with these, with a terminal node controller down here, you can send a packet message up to the satellite. It will connect, it will receive it, it will acknowledge it, and then later, at some other point in its orbit or whatever, if another station logs into the TNC with their call sign, the TNC will up there will say, hey, I've got a message for you, and it will forward that message that you sent down to the other station. So it's not real time necessarily, but it's a way to send email, so to speak, packet messages to another station via the satellite. That's PACSat. And this is the general configuration where you've got a computer going to a TNC, going to a radio, going to an antenna. Satellites carrying packet radio use what we call store and forward. They'll take the message from you addressed to KE4EA, they'll store it, and then when KE4EA logs into the satellite, it will be forwarded to him. That's store and forward. And some popular satellite bands besides UHF and VHF are the L band, which is also known as the 23 centimeter band, and the S band, the 13 centimeter band, and amateur radio operators have privileges in these two bands as well. So if you hear somebody talking about L band, it's around 1 gigahertz, and S band, it's around 3 gigahertz. Got the satellites up there. How do you keep them still? Well, remember gyroscopes? The satellite itself can be spun. That's called spin stabilization. It actually was one big gyroscope. And so here, for example, is a photo of a satellite in orbit, in space, using spin stabilization. It keeps the satellite oriented in one spot. But notice those things sticking out, those long lines, those are antennas. And you can imagine that if you're looking up at the satellite with an antenna, that your signal strength might be going up and down and up and down. That's called spin fading. And one way that you can help eliminate that is to use circular polarized receiving antennas, like this helical antenna. It will eliminate some of that spin fading from satellites. Well, how am I going to find satellites? How am I going to know where they're going to be, what frequencies and all that? Well, it's like Where's Waldo? You use satellite tracking programs, and you can get them from AMSAT. And the data about the satellite itself, as far as its orbital period, its speed, where it's going to ascend, where it's going to descend, it's called the Keplerian elements. Or back when I worked for Voice of America, we called it ephemeris data. Ephemeris is the Greek goddess of air. It's floating out in air. But Keplerian elements is the thing we're looking for the exam. And it's named after Johannes Kepler, a German physicist, an astronomer, and he did a lot of postulating about things astronomical. All right, we made it through the second section. Let's do some test questions, and then we'll take a break. So what is the direction of an ascending pass for an amateur satellite?
From south to north.
Charlie, it's from south to the north. Turn down your radios if you could, please, or your TVs. It's kind of a problem. Okay, which of the following is characteristic of an inverting linear transponder? Read carefully.
Delta.
Yes, delta. Doppler shift is reduced, signal position of the band is reversed, and upper sideband becomes lower sideband. And how is an upload signal processed by an inverting linear transponder? Inverting.
Delta.
Yeah, I heard delta. The signal is mixed, and the difference product in the mixer is what is used. All right, what is meant by the mode of an amateur radio satellite? Mode UV or mode VU? Yes, it's the satellite's uplink and downlink frequency bands. And what do the letters in a satellite's mode designator specify? Asking the same question in a different way.
Delta.
Yes, the uplink and downlink frequency ranges. And what are the Keplerian elements?
Alpha.
They're parameters that define the orbit of a satellite, and they're input into that computer software that you're going to get from AMSAT that'll tell you where to point your antenna to find the satellite. And which of the following types of signals can be relayed through a linear transponder?
Delta.
It's a linear transponder, so it can FM and CW, yes. Single sideband, slow scan TV, yes. PSK and packet, yes. All of those could go through. So why should effective radiated power be limited to a satellite that uses a linear transponder?
Eta.
Bravo. Avoid reducing the downlink power to all the other users. Don't be a power hog. And what do the terms L band and S band specify?
Alpha.
Yeah, those are the 23 and the 13 centimeter bands. You'll find them there on the color chart. And what type of satellite appears to stay in one position in the sky? Yeah, that's no, it's not Charlie. That's geomagnetic. No, geostationary. Yeah, read carefully. Yes. Okay. Good. And what type of an antenna can be used to minimize the effects of spin modulation?
Bravo.
Yeah, you saw the helical one there, a circularly polarized antenna. And what is the purpose of digital store and forward functions on an amateur radio satellite?
Charlie.
It's to hold digital messages in the satellite for later download. And which of the following techniques is used by digital satellites to relay messages?
Store and forward.
Yes, store and forward. Bravo, indeed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Chapter 2. I'm going to be out of here, and Dave will come in. But for right now, go out to the lobby and get yourself a snack. Let's take 5 minutes, and we'll be back.
Well, good evening. So good to be back with you again. I'm always excited about the classes that we're running here. Tonight we're going to do a little bit more on math. Now there's 3 preparatory sessions that I do following Gary's presentation. This is the second of 3. And tonight we're going to be primarily focused on using the TI-36X Pro calculator. And we're going to be going through all of the functions that you're going to need to be ready for Chapter 4. So in addition to going through some examples here together, it'd be real important to be practicing this between now and over the next 2 weeks, so you get familiar with the calculator. So next week, the 3rd session of the 3 preparatory is going to be, the main topic is going to be learning how to learn. That is fascinating material that I think will be a big help to you in your preparations for the extra material. So I sent out an email on Saturday, I believe, with some handouts and information in it. And if there's anybody listening to us that didn't get that email, I had one person that I got a bounce back that their email box was full. Or we may have some wrong email addresses. So if you didn't get an email from me with some attachments on last Saturday, please let Gary or I know so we can fix the mailing list.
And some people may have had a late entry, so may not have caught up to your list. I have the master list, and Dave works off of mine. So,
exactly.
Tim, that was you. That was what happened there.
Okay, very good. So, and the list that we maintain are only active during the time that we're presenting the class over these weeks. So, just wanted you to be aware of that. Okay, so today's plan, we're going to introduce the extra class reference sheet. That's kind of a neat document because it's got all of the math and helps on one page. I love one-page documents. We've got a lot of pages in the book, but what you need is primarily on that one page. We're going to briefly review radio units because that'll be important for some of our test questions. We'll spend a good amount of time driving the calculator. And then we're going to work an actual exam question together. And so I'm hopeful that you've got your calculator and you can follow along with us. If you don't, you get it between now and maybe next week or the week after, and you can review this presentation. They're all online. Gary will have it posted tomorrow morning. So you can follow along with us as best you can tonight and then review later as you can. The reference sheet that I mentioned, well, it's a little bit too small to read here, but if you printed out the handout, you'll be able to kind of see where we are. And again, it's one page focused on Chapter 4, all of the main things that you need to know for the test questions there. There's 3 sections. We've got radio units. We'll be breaking these out in more space. Formulas needed for the exam, that's kind of this middle section here. And then memory aids, things that you need to know that may not be doing calculations, but it'll be real helpful to know these things. There's 39 pages in the chapter, and I've condensed that down to 1 page for you, so I think this will be a lot easier to digest. So here are the a little bit bigger view here. Here's the reference sheet. Extra class reference sheet, and then something called the reference sheet tutorial. I only sent out page 1. This is a 6-page document, and you might be wondering, how did this come to be? Well, there's a lot of stuff over here on the reference sheet that people are trying to remember what some of the things are. So, amazingly, my wife, who has no technical background, not a mathematician, as she was preparing for to take her extra, she had tons and tons of questions that I might not have ever thought anybody would ask, okay, which was wonderful for me as an instructor because it told me what other people may be having difficulty with. So this is a very blow-by-blow, careful explanation of everything that it's a detailed explanation of everything that's over here. So I think that that'll be extremely helpful to you. We're going to be talking about setting calculator modes. I realize you can't read this, but it's in that handout, so it's something that you can refer back to. And we're going to be just covering page 1 of the reference sheet tutorial. So again, I hope you've had a chance to print these out so you can take some notes on them. So the first section, this is a little bit bigger and easier to see. First of all, we've got the nutty professor here, and the nutty professor is pointing to this column where we see that powers of 10 are incrementing or decrementing by 3. So we start out with units. So 1 times 10 to something, or something times 10 to the 0 power is just that value. So 5 times 10 to the 0 is just the number 5. And you've heard of kilohertz, megahertz, gigahertz. Well, those all refer to, you can express those as some value times a power of 10. Kilohertz times 10 to the 3rd, megahertz times 10 to the 6th, and so forth. The smaller ones, you see they go all the way down to pico, as in picofarads. A picofarad is actually a trillionth of a farad, real tiny number. You'd have all kinds of fun trying to put 12 zeros into your calculator in order to enter picofarads. So that's why doing this in scientific notation, or engineering notation as we're going to be calling it, is so much easier to work with. So you might have had this if you had physics in college or even high school. They talked about SI units. So all of these, that refers to these prefixes here, standardized units. So here's a bit of an expanded view where I've actually shown, what we're talking about here, where a pico is a trillionth, giga is a billion of something. Gigahertz, for example, we've got the one of the Wi-Fi bands is 2.4 gigahertz, 2.4 billion cycles per second. A terabyte, some of you might have heard of that. We don't really deal with too many tera units in ham radio, but that's 1,000 gigabytes. So if we went another 3 above this, made this 12. Ham radio, but that's 1,000 gigabytes. All right. So at any rate, I just wanted to share this with you. And there, if you'd like to know a little bit more, there's an ARRL reference here that we'll get into it a little bit more. The only thing that we deal with in ham radio that's not on this list, we've got something called the decibel, which is 1/10 of a bell. I didn't list that on the chart here, but the rest, we don't deal with that a lot. But I just wanted to focus in on these powers of multiples of 3. The middle of the reference sheet contains the formulas that we're going to need to deal with. We do have some calculation questions, which you'll have to solve. You'll see them here, time constants. So some of this is going to look kind of big and scary right now, and we're going to get to that in chapter 4. But the reason I wanted to point it out was to let you know that this is all you have to worry about. That might seem like a lot, but again, the 30-some pages in the manual, the key information is all condensed down to 1 page here. So if we can understand what we have in this section on the general class reference sheet, you're going to be well on your way to earning your 100% on your exam. So we've got some formulas up here, and then we've got a section down here that is just reference material. We don't have to calculate, for example, some of the things. Well, that's actually in the next section here. There's potential calculation questions for each of these. In the bottom section, that's what I was kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit on there. This talks about inverse and direct relationships. And just some general information that's very helpful. I'll be sharing some shortcuts that will help you remember some of this. So Eli the Iceman is one. You may have heard that term before. It's a way of figuring out phase angles and phase relationships. And if you can just remember this silly little phrase, it'll help you out with 3 or 4 of the exam questions. Similarly, these things, the pool questions just ask facts about these things. You don't have to actually do any calculations. And there's some interesting ways to remember these. Before I get to that, when I send out the rest of the general class reference guide, which you'll be getting between now and next week, and the remainder of the 6 pages there, it'll go through Eli the Iceman in great detail. If you can't hardly wait to understand what that means, E is the symbol for voltage, L, inductance, I, current. So if we've got an inductor, voltage, inductor L, E comes before I, so voltage is leading current for an inductor. So that's why that's magical. For ice, we've got a capacitor, phase relationships, the current is going to be leading voltage. So if you can just remember this silly little phrase, Eli the Iceman, anytime they're asking if voltage is leading or current is lagging, it approaches it both ways. This little phrase will help you figure that out. And I don't know if it's because my brain is small, but I can't remember that in my head. I actually have to write it down. If there's a problem involving capacitors, I have to write down ice. Then when I look at ice, I can see the relationships without having to figure it out in my head. There's about 5 pool questions related to this line down here, and there's a mental trick that you can use to help remember this. We won't really get into what this means in any detail until chapter 4, but I'll give you the memory tricks now. We've got impedance is the inverse of admittance. Impedance is the letter Z. Admittance is the letter Y. And over here we've got reactance. Susceptance is the inverse of reactance. Susceptance is the letter B. And there's a phase angle reversal that happens when you convert from X to B. This is just a fact that's helpful to remember because there's one pool question. So in terms of either a mental picture or a story, and it's very helpful to come up with these on your own, I'll give you the one that's here. The analogy that I like to use is a door. A door will impede your entry, or you may be admitted. So a door, think of it will impede you or it will admit you. So what is that worth? Okay, well, that'll let you associate impedance and admittance. And admittance is the letter Y. Why would I want to admit you? Okay, these are just silly little things that are very helpful in remembering these relationships. Okay, well, let's kind of think about this one for a minute. Reactance and susceptance. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about Bob. Bob is a very suspicious person. Okay, Bob, B, is suspicious. Susceptance. Okay, so if you come into a group of people and there's a suspicious person there, you're probably going to react to that person a little bit differently than others that might be in the room. So that's a way that you can associate reactance and susceptance. If you see a suspicious person named Bob, you're going to react to that person, be cautious. But it really isn't all that bad because Bob, you've heard of imaginary friends, okay? Well, some good news, Bob is imaginary, can't possibly hurt you. So there's a pool question that asks, what is susceptance? Well, it's the imaginary part of reactance. So these silly little phrases and ways of looking at it may help you when you come to these questions that won't make a lot of sense. Now, I've been in ham radio for quite a bit of time. I've never really needed to use admittance and susceptance for anything, but we need to talk about them because there's pool questions that we want you to be able to get correct. All right, so just throwing out a few tips, and hopefully you're taking some notes on your papers if you printed these out. We'll be repeating this as we get into chapter 4. Radio units review. We already kind of looked at this a little bit. There's another way of thinking thinking about these, I'll put that up here. One of our folks that used to help us on this class, Tom Walton is his name, liked to think of this turned on its side. And it's really amazing. The brain actually processes information differently if it's presented horizontally or vertically. So what Tom liked to say is this shows you how the numbers are incrementing as you go up. So I don't know if that helps you or not, but some people see it a little bit easier that way. So let's talk about direct and inverse relationships for a bit. These appear on the extra class reference sheet. Have you ever heard of a horse whisperer? I'll ask that first. That's somebody who's very good at training horses, and it's as if they can actually speak the language of the horse in training the horse. Well, there's a concept called an equation whisperer, where you can just look at a formula and automatically know some things about it without having any idea what it's actually doing. And we're going to consider two of those right now. First is a direct relationship, and here we've got capacitive reactance, X sub L, and its value turns out to be 2 pi times the frequency times the inductance. We'll get into this and define it a little bit more, but what you can know about this equation immediately without having any idea what these values mean is that anything that increases on this side, in other words, if frequency increases or inductance increases, X sub L is going to increase. That's what's meant by the direct relationship. So inductive reactance increases with an increase in frequency. As the value of inductance increases, likewise, frequency in L, the inductive reactance also increases. So this is the concept. Is there a question there? Somebody's unmuted. Okay, well, Gary will mute him. The other one is the inverse relationship. And notice what's happened here. We've got 1 over these values. So that works just the opposite. If either frequency or capacitance increases, reactive capacitance or capacitive reactance is going to decrease. So if we increase either of those, this one's going to go down. So capacitive reactance decreases with an increase in frequency, or as the value of capacitance decreases, the capacitive reactance increases. We'll talk a lot more about capacitive and inductive reactance when we get into chapter 4. For now, I just wanted you to get a grip of direct and inverse relationships, because there are several pool questions that say, if this happens, what happens to that? And bringing this back into mind will really help. These are 2 formulas that I'm going to recommend that you memorize because they'll help you in many ways. Now we're going to get into the calculator. Okay, we're kind of giving you a smattering of information, the intent being to get you prepared for chapter 4. So here's a picture of the calculator with some red circles. And the red circles represent buttons that we will use to work some of the formulas on the general class reference sheet that you'll need for the pool questions. And one thing you'll notice right away, way less than half of the functions are circled. There's only a few things that you'll need to know to use this calculator. Now there's a ton of YouTube videos out there. If you really want to learn a lot more about the calculator, the vast majority of our students want to learn just enough to be able to work the formulas to pass the pool questions. So I'm going to walk through some of these functions, and it'd be helpful to actually do it with the calculator. So if you have your calculator, grab it, and I'm going to move over to what we call our calculator cam. And here we have our magic calculator. And the first thing that we're going to do is talk about what I'm calling the shift function. That's the second button up at the top. It's just like the shift button on your electronic keyboard or typewriter. You'll notice that some of the text on the calculator is blue. For example, the on button has blue off right above it. So in order to turn on the calculator, we'll press the on button. We'll see we get a blinking light and some text up above. So if we wanted to turn off the calculator, it's a shifted function, press the second button, and the little second shows up here at the top, and then press the on button, which is really going to be the off button now, and if we were lucky, it turned off the calculator. Okay, and we'll turn it back on again. And reset is another function that's helpful to know. Notice that reset is right above the 0 key. It's possible that when you're going to take your test, it's possible that the examiner may ask you to reset your calculator. Now, we don't actually store formulas in this calculator, which is why it's generally okay to use in a ham exam. But some VE teams, we've had feedback that they've asked people to reset to make sure that there's nothing saved in the calculator. So we'll show you how to do that. I'm going to go second and then press reset. And then notice what happens. We get this interesting menu here. Reset, 1, no, 2, yes. A couple of ways that we can do this. We can either press the number 1, that'll do the reset, or we can use what's called the navigation diamond over here, and that goes left, right, up, and down. And if we go down to yes, and then press enter, it'll say memory cleared. So not only has the memory been cleared, any internal answers that are stored, but all of any calculator modes that you've set have also been cleared. So we're going to have to spend a little bit of time getting those put in correctly. So anytime there's something here and you want to get rid of it, you just press clear. Since we have just cleared the calculator and all of the modes, the next thing I'd like to do is actually to put in the modes that we're going to need to change for our class. So I'm going to skip over a couple of these things. We've already mentioned clear, enter, navigation. Before we get to modes, I might as well finish the list here. Error correction, there is a method of inserting and deleting characters. I pretty much never use that. If I make a mistake, I usually just clear the calculator and start over, because none of the things that we're doing are very complicated. But I wanted to let you know that it was there. There's another key that is what I call the least obvious key. That's the answer toggle key. That's this one over here. Now, the reason that that's not very obvious is because it does some very interesting things that can actually be helpful. And I'll demonstrate that. Okay. The pi key is one of the keys that one of the values we're going to need to put in. So I'm going to press the pi key, and you can go ahead and do this to follow along. And then I'm going to press enter, and let's see what happens. Pi shows up. Well, mathematically, that is exactly correct, but it's not very useful, okay? You probably want to know that it's 3.14. So the answer toggle, the function of the answer toggle key is that it will give you the answer in a different format. So I'm going to press it once, and now we see that it's 3.1459. That's actually a little bit more useful. If I press it again, we'll go back to pi again. So that's a demonstration of what the answer toggle will do. There might be some questions or some answers that come up that that include the square root of 3, for example. Again, that's not very valuable. The answer toggle will get you to something you can actually use. Let me clear. Anytime you have stuff in the display, you want to get rid of it. So the first thing to do before doing any calculation is to press the clear key. Now, multi-tap, let me introduce that concept. And we're actually going to be doing this for some of our work. We've got the pi, notice the pi key has got a pi, an E, and an I. Each time you tap it, it's going to become one of those three things. So let me do that. Pi, Tap it again, becomes E, which is a natural logarithm, which we won't be using. Tap it again, and I shows up. I is used in entering complex numbers, which we will be doing in Chapter 4. We'll be putting values into the calculator that are in a rectangular form and looking at them in polar form, so we will actually be using I. So I tap it again, it goes back to pi. And get rid of it, and press clear. So with that quick overview, let's now move on to the mode key. This will be important because if you reset the calculator, it's going to clear all of the modes. So the mode key is right here. If you press that once, you get all of this wonderful stuff. There's 6 different modes that can be set. Just to prove that, here we've got a little down arrow. If we use the navigation diamond, I'll press it once, it moves down 1, down again, 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 and again. So these are all things that can be set in the calculator and will affect the way that it operates. For our purposes, so to check the current state, you can press mode, and right now it's in all defaults. The reason that all defaults are shown is because we cleared the calculator. So there's 3 modes that we'll want to change to work through our class. The first thing that we'll want to change is that we'll want to change the display format to something called engineering notation. You might have noticed when we used the example for pi, it gave us a big, long, hairy number. We want to see that a little bit differently. We want to set engineering mode. So to get over from normal, over to engineering, we use a navigation diamond, scientific, engineering. And then to set that, notice that it's blinking now, just press enter. 2 things will happen. Okay, norm is no longer highlighted, but engineering is. So we've successfully changed that mode. That will cause all answers to display in a multiple of 3 in the exponent, which will be very easy to tell megahertz from kilohertz and so forth. The next thing we want to do is change the display so that we only see 2 decimal points, decimal places. So to get down to that line, go down 1, then move over to the number 2, and then if I press enter, 2 is highlighted and flashing. Now most of the answers in our book and in the pool questions have the answers to 2 decimal places, so that it's kind of handy to have this give it to you the same way. Plus it's really hard if your whole screen fills up with numbers. The last thing that we need to set, there's 3 mode settings that we're going to change. Next one starts out with real. And we've got A plus BI and our angle sign. This is a theta. We're going to want to move over to three times, or twice actually, to set it to this value, our angle sign theta. Now you're probably, we haven't gotten into this yet, so don't get scared. But what's going to happen is we're going to be putting values into the calculator in what's called a rectangular form. Then when we hit enter, it'll come up in polar form. In that, it'll give us a value and an angle. The angle is called a phase angle, relationship between voltage and current. There are several questions that relate to that. And because we've set up the calculator this way, we don't have to use any trigonometry whatsoever to do the rectangular to polar conversions, which is one of the big reasons we recommend this very specific calculator. So what have we done now? We've changed 3 modes. Engineering, 2 decimal places, and we've told it to show the polar version of a value entered. And again, we'll get into that more. And as I said, there's 6. We don't want to change this one. Decimal, hex, binary, it's for computer stuff. And classic / math print, you want to use math print. If you don't have math print set, that's the one that's bolded. Some of the other functions won't work correctly. So I spent a ton of time trying to figure out how to get out of this stupid menu. I finally figured it out. All you have to do is press the clear key, and that'll clear it for you. All right, now did we successfully, or what are the modes that are in the calculator? Were we successful in getting them set? Well, we can verify it by pressing the mode key. We've got engineering, got 2 decimal places in R, angle, sine, theta. Those are the 3 that we wanted. So we accomplished that. Now that's detailed on the general class reference sheet tutorial. So you can work back through it from there. So we have now done all of these. We continue on with the other keys that we're going to be using for Chapter 4. The answer function, there's a register in the calculator. When you do a calculation, it will remember that even after you press the clear key. We won't actually be using that in any of our examples, but if you want to use a calculator for other things, it's kind of handy to know that it's there. We've got something called the fraction key. That's this key right here. I call it the box over box key. And there's a tremendous advantage in using this in that the formulas that appear on our general class reference sheet, we can put in extra class. Yes, thank you. This will allow us to enter those exactly in the format that they appear there. Another key that is super confusing for most people is the negation key. That's this key here. You notice we've got the arithmetic keys, divide, multiply, subtract, add, and we got this goofy thing down here, which I'm calling the negation key. We're going to use that for entering negative exponents. I'll demonstrate that in a bit. We've got the square and square root key over here. We're going to need to be putting some formulas will include a square root function. Be second, because it's blue. And then lastly, we've got the exponent entry key. That's the EE key right here. So just giving you an advanced peek, if we wanted to put in 6 megahertz, we'd be doing 6 EE 6 times 10 to the 6th power. And we'll be demonstrating that as we continue on here. So just a lot of overview right now. And you don't have a good idea of some of the application yet, because we haven't gotten to Chapter 4 yet. But let's try to actually do some calculations here. We're demonstrating some other things as we go. Now this is a really tough one. 3 plus 7. You probably don't need the calculator for that. But it'll help us to reinforce some of what we've talked about. So what do we do first? We always clear, even though it was clear. 3 plus 7. So we've got 3. Hopefully you're following along with your calculator. 3 plus 7. Now, I'll stop for a minute and ask you, what do you think we're going to see when we press enter? Enter is like the equals key. Just answer that to yourself, and let's see what happens. All right. Look what happened. We've got 10.00. Remember, we set the display to 2 decimal places. And E0. Okay, we're expressing this in engineering notation, which gives us times 10 to a value. In this case, it's 0. So I remember I said the 0 value is just the value itself. So 3 plus 7 is 10. 10 times 10 to the 0 power is what it's telling us there. This looks kind of excessive, okay, but it's going to be very valuable to see answers in this form as we get into some of the other things. Probably wasn't what you were expecting to see. I wanted to explain it. Next, we're going to enter 17 megahertz. First thing we'll do is clear the calculator. So 17 megahertz. What's that? It's 17 times 10 to the 6th power. So 17 EE for exponent entry gives us just 1 E, and times 10 to the 6th power for megahertz. 6. Okay, just ask yourself, what do you think we're going to see? 17 E6, 17 times 10 to the 6th power. For the fun of it, I'm going to use the answer toggle key. And here you actually have all the zeros. Now that's a pain in the butt. If you wanted to actually put 17 megahertz in as 17,000,000, much easier to do 17 E6. And when we get into picofarads, it's going to be even more extreme, which we're going to do next. First thing we do is clear. Now, if any of you have worked ahead and tried to do some of these things and wound up with syntax errors, I'm going to show you why in just a second. So 24 picofarads. 24. We know we're going to be doing EE, exponent entry, and then here's the magic trick. Negative exponents, you have to use the negation key for. So I'm going to do that. Pico is times 10 to the minus 12. Put in 12, and then enter. 24 E minus 12, 24 times 10 to the negative 12th power, 24 picofarads. Now just to show you what would happen if you did this incorrectly, because some of you are going to do this, 24 EE, now I'm going to use the minus key here, 12, syntax error. Okay, so if you get that and putting some of these formulas in, it's probably because you were entering a negative exponent and didn't use the negation key. I'll clear that. Enter 12 microhenries, very similar to the one we just did. First of all, clear. 12 EE. Microhenries is times 10 to the minus 6th. Negation key. 6. Enter 12 times 10 to the minus 6th. So that's how we navigate through some of these things. All right, jump back over to our presentation. Just review what we've done. We've done on-off reset. We've covered most of the most frequently used keys. We did clear, enter. We talked about the navigation diamond. Error correction, which you probably won't need. I just normally will clear the calculator and start over. And talked about the answer toggle key. We'll be demonstrating that further. And we talked about the multi-tap keys, just reinforcing what we talked about. The mode key, we went through and talked about checking the current state using the mode button. We had the 3 modes that we had to change. We talked about how to exit when we were in there. Answer function, which I just wanted you to be aware that was there. We won't actually be using that. The fraction key, that was the box over box. The negation key we needed for the negative exponents. We talked about square and square root. To get to square root, it's the second key. We talked about the exponent entry key. Now we're going to take everything that we've talked about and everything that we've learned so far and get ready to amaze yourself, okay? You're going to be totally amazed. We went through these things. Well, we'll be amazed on the next slide. Okay. we went through all of these. Now here's where we're going to amaze you, all right? This is an actual pool question, E5A02. What is the resonant frequency of an RLC circuit if R is 22 ohms, L is 50 microhenries, and C is 40 picofarads? Okay, that's a real test question that you're going to have to solve. So the first thing you'd want to do is to kind of look on your general class reference sheet and see.
Extra class.
Thank you. We did the general class last time, so I've got that on the brain. This is the extra class, because you're all going to be extras when we're done with all of this in December. Very good. Thank you, Gary. So look on the extra class reference sheet and find out which formula has all of these values on it. Well, there's one that comes close. Frequency of resonance is 1 over 2 pi LC, but notice there's no R. So what do we do with the R? Well, it turns out that we don't have to do anything. The R is just extra information that doesn't affect this calculation. So there's a couple of pool questions that are put to us this way, and what you just have to do is ignore the R. So here's the problem. Resonant frequency, here's the formula, 1 over 2 pi times the square root of LC. And we're given L as 50 microhenries. We're given C as 40 picofarads. And if we get really, really lucky, we're going to find that we get an answer of 3.56 megahertz. And there's 2 questions in the pool that deal with resonant frequency, and they both wind up having answers in the ham bands. So that's a little trick that you can remember to see if you got it right. Okay, so let's go over to the calculator and see if we can do this. And this is where I said we would amaze you. You are going to amaze yourself, actually. So we've got the formula here. First thing to do is clear. Okay. And we're going to want the calculator display to look just exactly like this. And that's the great beauty of doing it the way I'm going to demonstrate. So this is in the form of a fraction. It's 1 over something. So we're going to use the box over box key. And notice the top box is blinking. So you might imagine we're going to put the value 1 in there. I'll do that. All right, now how in the world did we get down to the denominator, or the lower part of the fraction? Well, that's the navigation diamond. Now we've got the bottom box blinking. What goes in there? 2 pi times the square root of LC. Well, 2 pi, I think we can figure that out. It's 2, and then pi. And the calculator knows that that means take 2 and multiply it times pi. The next thing that we need to do is get what's called the radical sign into this line. Notice we have that here, square root. So I'm going to press second, and then x squared. And notice how this is coming out to look just exactly like the formula is. I love this calculator for that reason. Now we have to put in the values of L and C. So L is 50 microhenries. I said we're going to use everything that we've learned so far. So 50 microhenries is going to be 50 EE microhenries. That's times 10 to the minus 6th. So I have to use the negation key, put in a 6. Now we have to actually multiply this times the value of the capacitor. So we'll have to use the multiply key here. That gives us a little star, which is means multiply. Now we need to enter 40 picofarads. 40 EE, negation key, not the minus key, negation key, 12, because pico is times 10 to the minus 12th. Now if we are super, super lucky, when we press enter, we'll get something that looks like this, 3.56 times 10 to the 6th, which is 3.56 megahertz. So we'll jump back to the presentation, yes, and if you can unspotlight me for just a minute, so we can see the class. Anybody that actually followed along and got the right answer, just wave your hand if you would. Okay, we've got several that did. Good, thank you very much. Okay, you can come back to me then. And if you didn't, or you don't have your calculator yet, when you do, go back through this and see if you can get it. Okay, so that's the calculator for tonight. And what are we going to do next week? Well, Gary's going to do chapter 3, which is everybody's favorite, rules and regulations. And then I'll be on after intermission again to talk about learning how to learn. I'll be sending the full 6-page tutorial to you this week with more step-by-step guides. There's one handout that I sent you on Saturday that we didn't talk about. It looks a little bit like this. I call that a training wheels document because it gives everything that you enter and the results in the calculator. And I'll be supplying 2 more of these. So try to work through those on your own if you would, and be ready for next week. All right, so here's a question. Can brain science help you pass the extra exam? I think you probably can understand that I'm trying to get you to think yes. So we're going to be considering learning how to learn. And Barbara Oakley, who's one of the authors of a book I'm going to share next week, made this statement: learning how to learn is the most powerful tool you can ever grasp. I had to think about that for a little bit, but yeah, I think that's true. In high school, college, you have lots of stuff you have to learn, but do you ever remember taking a class on learning how to learn? Well, what tools can you use to learn that stuff? Well, we're going to talk about that next week. More handouts coming. And now the conclusion, we have covered a lot. Now it's really important that you practice this because that will make it feel like you own it. So the stuff we covered tonight, review this. It'll be available on YouTube probably tomorrow morning, if not tonight. And try and see if you can get through these things on your own. Look at these handouts, see if you can work some of these formulas, and then you'll have some questions. So that's all that I have for tonight. We have 2 minutes left, so I'll turn it over to you, Gary. You can speak about next week.
Yeah, well, we've got a few minutes left. Any questions or comments from the Zoom classroom?
Thank both of you.
You're
You're
welcome.
very welcome.
I hope you hold our hands real tight.
Oh yeah, no, we wanted to give you an overview of some of this stuff, knowing that you hadn't done it before. We haven't actually gotten to how to apply it from chapter 4, but we're making memory hooks. And if you can establish those memory hooks, you can hook practical things to those hooks. So we're going one little step at a time.
Okay, I'll get my calculator ordered tonight. So
Good. Yep. Try and go through what we did tonight, and you'll be there. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, what's the price of gold today?
Price of gold. Well, I don't know how to.
You asked, or did you have a question? You assumed it was about.
Now there's always one. Now we know who it is.
Yeah, we know.
I just want the winning lottery numbers.
Well, I don't know if this calculator will help you with that, but you can always hope.
Sandra, did you have your hand up?
I took your classes.
Yes.
I took both your
Go ahead.
classes to become a technician in general. I passed with flying colors. And I
Excellent.
am holding you
Yeah.
to make sure that I do the same thing here.
Yeah. We'll take that challenge. We will. And there was another hand up. I saw.
Sandra.
Rita. Okay.
No, Sandra.
Yeah, I was following along exactly what you were doing with the calculator, and I double-checked it and did it again, and I get a syntax error.
Yep. That's because you used the minus key instead of the negation key.
Nope, I was using the negation key.
Oh, then something else happened. Try it again, and there's a step-by-step handout that I sent out. And if it still doesn't come out for you, then send me an email or call me. We'll work through it together.
Dave's real good. He'll get you through it. No
And-
problem.
I'll help you.
And I feel kind of silly because I have a math minor and I taught math, so.
Well, yeah, you've never used this calculator before, nor had
I have
this
not,
material.
no.
Okay, yeah. So you'll get there.
You'll love it eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Yes, now I found that as I'm going through the formula, if I do not use the times key, it's going to give me a syntax error as well. But I did have a question. Have you ever used the second above the fraction key that already has the one in there? It just takes out an extra step.
Well, it would seem to, but the downside of that is that you can't put the formula in so that it exactly matches what we're seeing in the formula. I've played with that, and trust me, it's easier if you use the box over box thing.
It's a habit.
Okay.
It's a better habit.
Yeah. Anything else?
All right, well, go ahead, take some time off, let your brain cool off. Next week, rules and regulations. Hey, no math, no calculator involved. So,
Yay. Okay.
Every right answer you get on rules and regulations is one you can, kind of fudge on with the math or calculation. Don't worry, there's not that many questions. We're going to get there. So, until next Tuesday, 73.
73.
See y'all.
Thank you.
You betcha.